if we look at the apology, it certainly does break itself up naturally into sections. A little background. Socrates himself gives enough background, I think, in the course of his speech, filling us in on at least by his account on why he's there. And of course, the dialogue, or not, it's not a dialogue, it's a speech. Most of what Plato wrote with Socrates as the main character were dialogues, conversations between Socrates and other people, in which Socrates usually took the lead role, no doubt, but they were conversations where this is a different sort of thing, in that it is a speech. There's a little bit of interrogation in the middle of it when Socrates gets to face one of his accusers and ask him questions, but most of it is Socrates giving a speech, which again is unusual for Socrates. He's not a speech maker, although he, in the dialogue, pretty much shows that he's a great speech maker. But the idea here is that he is called upon by his accusers because he's actually been indicted for a criminal offense or a set of criminal offenses, which he has to defend himself against. And this is his defense speech. It is a very, very dramatic setting. He is standing in front of a jury of 500 men, one would imagine in the open air, in some sort of auditorium, or not auditorium, some sort of open air. I forget what the Greeks called it, but a court. And the jurors there were 500 jurors that were listening to his speech and who would judge him. So I like to read it aloud, actually, and I like to read it aloud in a loud voice because I imagine that the only way that he could have made himself heard in those days was by having a very loud voice. But whatever helps you read through it. It is, of course, a fascinating document, and one of the first things that you have to make a decision about, I suppose, or at least keep in mind, is that the way that he describes himself in the beginning. He says that he's not a good speaker, and he asks that the jurors give him some slack and treat him as if he were a foreigner, because he says he is a foreigner. He's never been a part of any kind of legal proceeding, so he doesn't know what he's doing, he says. And he's also 70 years old, so he's kind of set in his ways. And but the thing to keep in mind is, do you really think that this speech is not crafted, is not an incredibly well structured public oration? I don't know. I don't know. It seems to me to be put together with a lot of knowledge of rhetoric and a lot of intelligence and a lot of art. But that's what he says, is that he's a simple man. And that in a sort of, maybe the oldest rhetorical trick in the book, says, well, all I can do is tell you the truth. I can't come up with these fancy ways of speaking that are so impressive that my opponents do. All I can do is tell you that they're liars, and that I'll tell you the real truth, which is maybe the ultimate rhetorical move. To say that you're not using any rhetoric, you're just telling people the truth, and maybe he is, and he probably is, but really, quite an amazing document in that respect. This first section is where he says that he introduces himself to the jury and makes some preliminary remarks, and then he goes into this notion that he's got actually two sets of accusers: the former older accusers and the present accusers. The present accusers are Miletus and Nitus and Lycon, who have actually brought the charge against him. But he says that he has to deal with the earlier accusers first. And the earlier accusers is just public opinion. He's been around doing his thing for a long time in Athens, so that most of the jurors at least think that they're familiar with what he does and who he is. And he regards that as disastrous because he thinks that the public opinion of him is completely false, that they got him wrong. Um, and in this first section, which runs to the point where he begins to cross-examine Miletus, several pages into it, or a few pages into it, I guess. He really gives an account of which I don't know how seriously it's meant to be taken in terms of the actual reasons that he began to do philosophy in the way he did, but an account of how he got its start. And that is that a friend of his went to the Delphic Oracle, part of their religion, and asked the priestess of Apollo a question. And that is whether there was anyone wiser than Socrates. And to Socrates, the completely astounding answer, no, came back. And the reason that it's so astounding is that he doesn't consider himself and never has considered himself wise at all. And that the kind of things that people think of him, that he's some kind of puffed up, kind of ridiculous figure who makes all sort of claims about knowing all sorts of supernatural things, and that he never claimed to know anything at all, and he never claimed to have any kind of special wisdom at all. So he's perplexed by the Delphic Oracle, and it goes on a kind of a mission to find out what it meant. How could the Delphic Oracle say that Socrates is the wisest person, or that no one is wiser than Socrates? And this is the very dramatic sort of, and who knows how seriously to take it as actual fact, but this is a very dramatic setting for doing the kind of things that he does, which is asking people questions about what they know. And that really is what the dialogues do in general, actually the early ones, Socrates asking people to define things, to explain things, and then showing them that there are really big problems in the kind of answers that they give. And that really is what he says, and really what brought him here is that people don't like that in general, especially people who have reputations, politicians, great poets, respected business people, that if you show them, especially in public, that they don't know what they thought they knew, they tend to get angry and embarrassed. And if you do it in front of other people, they get really upset. And so Socrates, for all his supposed political naivete, is quite aware that he is making enemies. He says it outright, that he realizes that he's making enemies of the most dangerous kind at a certain point in this first section, but that he can't help it because he's doing he's on a mission from God here. He says to try to find out what the Delphic Oracle was getting at when it said that there was no one wiser than him, and out of this emerges perhaps one of the most important things that Socrates ever said, apparently, and that is that after this encounter with these famous men and his discovery that they really didn't know what they thought they knew, this very famous notion that Socrates believes that he knows nothing, but that's his great asset, because he doesn't believe that he knows what he doesn't know. And that's what he finds constantly around him, is people who think that they know when they don't. And they might know a little bit, especially in the case of craftsmen who actually know how to make things or fix things, or, invent things, but that they thought that they knew other things too because of their limited knowledge of their craft that they didn't know. And Socrates, at the end of the day, says that he's happy where he is. That he knows that he still doesn't really know anything, but at least that he knows that. he doesn't labor under the delusion of knowledge, and that this is better. He says, therefore I ask myself on behalf of the oracle whether I would like to be as I was, neither having their knowledge nor their ignorance, or like them in both. And I made answer to myself and the oracle that I was better off as I was. That is, it's better to, well, that it's very good to know that you don't know. That thinking that you know without really knowing is a terrible state to be in. And here another decision you have to make. He says, he's kind of astounded when people get angry when he shows them that they don't know what they knew or they thought they knew. And because he really thinks that this is the greatest gift that someone can give to another person. Um, that 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 he himself would regard, if somebody did that for him, he would regard that person as a real blessing. That he really can't believe that people would rather put up the pretense of knowledge than to be shown that they really don't know. And he really doesn't get it. And that's I think an important part of the dialogue is that Socrates really believes that what he does, showing people that they don't know what they thought they knew, is really a great public and private um, benefit, a great thing that he's doing for the city and for its citizens individually. And he really can't believe, if we take him at his word, he really can't believe that people would take it so hard.